8 years. That's how long it takes to grow an oak tree to a respectable height. It's the time it takes for a child to go from learning to read to navigating the treacherous waters of middle school. For me, 8 years was the length of a single sustained breath hold, a self-imposed exile from the world of small luxuries and spontaneous joys. It was the price of a dream. You see, I come from a family that measures worth in square footage and brand names, not in the old money, discreet way, but in the loud, anxious way of people who are terrified of being found out. My father, a man who could fix anything, spent his life managing maintenance for luxury high-rises he could never afford to live in. My mother, who had an unerring eye for quality, spent her days selling it to other women in a high-end boutique. They understood value, but they had forgotten about worth. My older sister, Charlotte, absorbed this lesson like a sponge. She married Mark, a man whose portfolio was his most interesting personality trait. They lived in a sprawling, sterile new build in the suburbs, a house so devoid of personality it looked like a 3D rendering. Their life was a carefully curated Instagram feed of brunch spots, resort vacations, and designer handbags. And then there was me, the quiet one, the one who worked a steady but unimpressive job in library sciences. The one who, for 8 years, became a ghost in my own life. It started as a small promise to myself. A whisper in the dark after another family dinner where the talk was all about stock options and ski trips to Aspen. I wanted something that was mine. Not borrowed, not gifted, not approved of by committee. Mine. Something built not with a trust. Fund, but with my own 2 hands and the sweat of my own brow. I wanted a home. So the sacrifice began. My 2008 sedan, which I named the Old Grey Mare, became my steadfast companion. I learned to do my own oil changes, watching YouTube tutorials, until my fingernails were permanently black. While my colleagues talked about their weekend trips to wine country, I was eating instant ramen, experimenting with just how many different ways you could prepare it before you lost your mind. The answer, by the way, is 6. I became a master of the no. No, I couldn't make it for drinks. No, I couldn't join the girls' trip to CIBO. No, I couldn't buy the new iPhone. Every no was a brick in the foundation of my future home. My friends were kind, but after a few years, the invitations started to dwindle. I don't blame them. My life, from the outside, must have looked painfully small, a tiny, gray existence. But on the inside, a universe was expanding. With every dollar I moved into my high-yield savings account, I felt a tremor of power. This wasn't deprivation. This was construction. After 8 years, 6 months, and 14 days, I had it. A number in a bank account that looked like a typo. It was a miracle of compound interest and brutal, unyielding discipline. I had the down payment. My best friend, Maya, was a real estate agent. She was one of the few who knew the full extent of my monastic existence. She didn't pity me. She championed me. She'd send me listings for years just to keep my spirits up. Most were laughably out of reach digital window shopping. But then, one Tuesday, an email landed in my inbox with the subject line, "This is IT. Call me. Now." It was an estate sale. An apartment in a beautiful pre-war brick building downtown. The kind with elegant ironwork and the marble lobby that had seen better days. The owner, a woman who had lived there for 60 years, had passed away, and her children, who lived across the country, just wanted it gone. The price was so low it felt like a clerical error. Maya took me to see it that afternoon. The moment she opened the door, I understood the discount. The air was thick with the scent of dust, mothballs, and a century of untold stories. The wallpaper, a pattern of faded yellow roses, was peeling in long, curling strips. The kitchen was a time capsule from the 1970s. Complete with avocado green appliances and linoleum floors, stained with the ghosts of forgotten meals. The bathroom tiles were cracked, the windows were painted shut. It was, by all objective standards, a wreck. Maya looked at me, her face a mask of concern. I know, Eli, it's a lot, but she didn't see what I saw. I saw the bones. I saw the 10-foot ceilings and the original crown molding hiding beneath layers of beige paint. I saw the herringbone, pattern of the hardwood floors obscured by a filthy, threadbare carpet. I saw the way the afternoon light streamed through the grime-caked windows, promising something beautiful. My father, for all his emotional distance, had taught me how things worked. I'd spent my childhood trailing him on jobs, learning about plumbing and wiring and the importance of a solid foundation. I knew what was cosmetic and what was catastrophic. This place? This place had a soul. It's perfect, I whispered, and the word echoed in the dusty air. It was the first time I had felt true, unadulterated joy in nearly a decade. The mortgage process was a fresh circle of hell. My freelance editing gigs and my librarian salary were scrutinized, my life savings picked apart by underwriters who saw me as a risk, but I had my paperwork in order. 8 years of meticulous records. Every penny accounted for. I was undeniable. The day I closed, Maya met me outside the apartment with the keys. They weren't shiny or new. They were old, heavy brass keys on a simple steel ring. When she placed them in my palm, their weight felt monumental. It was the weight of 2,920 days of sacrifice. The weight of every no I had ever said. I walked into my apartment. My empty, dusty, dilapidated, beautiful apartment. I didn't have a stick of furniture. My voice echoed off the bare plaster walls. I stood in the middle of the living room, a single beam of sunlight cutting through the gloom and illuminating a cloud of dancing dust motes. And I did something I hadn't done in years. I sobbed. Not tears of sadness or exhaustion, but of overwhelming, gut-wrenching relief. I had done it on my own. No help, no handouts, no safety net. I had built this. This was my victory, and I couldn't wait to share it. That Sunday was our requisite family dinner. The air in my parents' house was always the same, a mix of expensive potpourri and unspoken tension. Charlotte and Mark were already there, holding court in the living room. Charlotte was detailing the horrors of having to wait 6 weeks for a custom-ordered Italian sofa. I mean, can you imagine? She sighed, swirling a glass of Chardonnay that probably cost more than my weekly grocery budget. It's just thrown the whole feng shui of the room off. Mark nodded sagely. Supply chain issues are hitting the luxury sector hard. I waited for a lull in the conversation, my heart thumping against my ribs like a trapped bird. I had the photos pulled up on my phone, the before pictures I'd taken with such hope. I actually have some news, I said, my voice a little too loud. Four heads turned to me, their expressions ranging from mild curiosity to outright boredom. I bought a place, I said, a smile breaking across my face. I closed on Friday. It's an apartment downtown. For a moment, there was silence. I saw a flicker of something in my mother's eyes. Surprise. Maybe even pride. But it was extinguished as quickly as it appeared. Charlotte was the first to speak. She let out a short, sharp laugh. You? You bought something? Where? I slid my phone across the coffee table. It's in the old Beaumont building. It needs a lot of work, but the bones are incredible. Charlotte picked up the phone and swiped through the pictures. Her perfectly sculpted eyebrows climbed towards her hairline. Eliza, oh honey, no. She started to laugh again, a cruel, tinkling sound. She passed the phone to Mark. Look at this. It's a disaster. Mark glanced at the photos with a dismissive smirk. Charming, he said, the word dripping with condescension. He looked at me, a pathetic little creature in his eyes. Well, I suppose it's suitable for you. Suitable for you. The words landed like stones in my gut. My mother took the phone next. She peered at the screen, her lips pursed in disapproval. Eliza, why didn't you tell us you were looking? You should have asked Charlotte to go with you. She has such a good eye. She looked from the phone to me, her gaze sweeping over my department store jeans and years-old sweater. The implication was clear. I obviously did not doubt my father, who had been silent until now, just shook his head slowly. That's a lot of work, kid. Probably a money pit. You should have been more careful. And just like that, the air went out of my world. The monumental victory I had felt just 2 days before shriveled into something small and embarrassing. My 8 years of sacrifice, my discipline, my quiet triumph, it was all reduced to a punchline in their pristine living room. They hadn't asked how I'd managed it. They hadn't congratulated me. They hadn't seen the potential, the love, the hope I had poured into this. They had just seen the peeling wallpaper and the cracked tiles, and in it, they had seen a reflection of me, shabby, foolish, and not quite up to their standards. I stood up, my chair scraping against the hardwood floor. I have to go, I mumbled, not meeting anyone's eyes. But we haven't even had dinner. my mother said, her voice laced with that familiar, wounded tone she used whenever I failed to perform my familial duty. I'm not hungry, I said. I walked out of their house, the sound of Charlotte's laughter still ringing in my ears. I got into the old gray Mari and drove back to my empty apartment. I walked in, the same brass keys feeling like lead in my pocket now. The beam of sunlight was gone. The rooms were dark and silent. And in the middle of my hard-won, beautiful, disastrous home, I sank to the floor and I broke. The tears this time were not of relief. They were of a grief so profound it felt like it was tearing me apart from the inside out. My family had taken my greatest accomplishment and, in less than 5 minutes, had turned it to ash. For a few days, I was paralyzed. The dust motes settled. The silence of the apartment felt accusatory. Their voices echoed in my head. A disaster, suitable for you. You should have asked. Every flaw in the apartment seemed to scream my own inadequacy back at me. I'd wander from room to room, tracing the cracks in the plaster with my fingers. Feeling like a fraud. Maybe they were right. Maybe I had been a fool, but then, on the third day, something shifted. The grief, which had been a cold, heavy blanket, began to smolder. It ignited into a quiet, burning rage. A rage at their casual cruelty, at their inability to see past the surface of things, whether it was an apartment or their own daughter. Suitable for you? I'll show you what's suitable for me. That anger became my fuel. I wasn't just fixing an apartment anymore. I was rebuilding myself. I was waging a one-woman war against their judgment. I spent the next month in a fugue state of pure, relentless labor. I woke up at dawn, my body aching in places I didn't know could ache, and I worked until I collapsed into a sleeping bag on the floor, too tired to even dream. I became a regular at the local hardware store, the staff eventually greeting me by name. I learned to spackle and sand until the walls were as smooth as glass. I tore out the filthy carpet myself, rolling it up and dragging it down 3 flights of stairs, revealing the magnificent, perfectly preserved herringbone floors beneath. I spent a week on my hands and knees, sanding and staining them until they gleamed with a deep, warm luster. I watched hours of tutorials, learning to cut and lay tile in the bathroom, choosing a classic black and white penny tile that felt both timeless and fresh. I scraped decades of paint off the original brass window ledges until they shone. I painted the walls a soft, gallery white that made the 10-foot ceilings feel like they soared into the heavens. The avocado green appliances in the kitchen were hauled away, replaced with sleek, modern stainless steel units I found at a scratch and dent outlet. I assembled the IKEA cabinets myself, a process that nearly broke my spirit but ultimately made me feel like a certified genius. I installed a deep farmhouse sink and a simple white subway tile BACKSPLASH dot. With every completed task, I felt a piece of myself clicking back into place. Every screw I drove, every tile I laid, every wall I painted was an act of defiance. It was a rebuttal to their mockery. This wasn't a disaster, it was a sanctuary. And I was its creator. A month later, it was done. The apartment was transformed. It was beautiful, stylish, warm, and filled with light. It was a physical manifestation of my own resilience. It was an inward me. And I knew, with a certainty that settled deep in my bones, that I needed them to see it. I needed to prove them wrong, not for their approval anymore. I was done chasing that, but for my own sense of justice. I wanted to see the looks on their faces when they saw what their disaster had become. So I planned a housewarming party. A second chance, not for them really, but for me. A chance to reclaim my narrative. I sent out a group text to my parents, Charlotte and Mark. Hi everyone, I finished the renovations on my apartment, and I'd love for you to see it. I'm having a small housewarming party next Saturday at 6 p.m. Hope you can make it. The replies trickled in. Mom, okay. Charlotte, sure. Dad, we'll be there. No enthusiasm, no questions. Just flat, perfunctory acceptances. It stung, but I expected it. There was one other person I had to invite. The one person in my family who had always felt like a port in a storm. My grandmother, Eleanor. My father's mother. She was 90 years old, sharp as a tack, and the matriarch of our family in every sense of the word. She lived an hour away, in a beautiful little house on a lake that had been in our family for generations. She didn't suffer fools, and she had a way of seeing right through the polished facade of my parents and sister. I called her Grandma Eleanor, it's Eliza. Eliza, darling, what a lovely surprise. How are you? Her voice was like chamomile tea, warm and soothing. I'm good, Grandma. I'm really good. I actually have some big news. I bought an apartment. The delight in her voice was immediate and genuine. You did? Oh, my clever girl. Tell me everything. I told her about the 8 years of saving, about the dilapidated state of the apartment, about the vision I had for it. I conveniently left out my family's reaction. I didn't want to color her perception, and I just finished renovating it. I finished, and I'm having a little housewarming party this Saturday. I know it's a bit of a drive, but I would love it so much if you could come. Eliza Catherine, she said, her voice firm. I wouldn't miss it for the world. I am so proud of you. I could burst. I hung up the phone, my eyes welling with tears. That was it. That was all I had wanted to hear. I'm so proud of you. It was a simple sentence, but coming from her, it was enough to shore up all my crumbling defenses. The day of the party arrived. I spent the entire day in a state of nervous excitement. I cleaned until the place was spotless. I bought fresh flowers, peonies, and eucalyptus, and arranged them in a simple vase on the new coffee table. I curated a playlist of soft jazz and soul music. I cooked a beautiful roast chicken with rosemary and lemon, garlic mashed potatoes, roasted asparagus with parmesan. I even baked a chocolate cake from scratch. The apartment smelled divine. It smelled like home. 6 o'clock came and went. Then 6:30. The sun began to set, casting long golden shadows across my gleaming hardwood floors. The food was getting cold. The silence in the apartment grew louder, punctuated only by the soft music from the speakers. I checked my phone. Nothing. No texts. No missed calls. At 6:45, I tried calling my mom. Straight to voicemail. I called my dad. Voicemail. I called Charlotte. Voicemail. A cold, familiar dread began to creep up my spine. They weren't just late, 7 o'clock. I was standing by the window, staring down at the empty street when my phone buzzed. A text message. It was from my mother. My heart leaped with a sudden, stupid surge of hope. Maybe their car broke down. Maybe there was an emergency. I opened the message. It wasn't an explanation. It was a photo. A selfie. My mother, my father, Charlotte, and Mark all squeezed into a booth at a restaurant. A fancy restaurant, one I recognized from Charlotte's Instagram posts. The kind with white tablecloths, ridiculously large wine glasses, and a price point. That made my eyes water. They were all smiling. Grinning, actually. Smug, triumphant grins. Beneath the photo was a caption. 5 words that shattered the last vestiges of my hope into a million tiny pieces. Family dinner, so much better than expected. I read it once. Twice, a third time. The meaning was unmistakable. This wasn't an accident. This was a statement. A deliberate, coordinated act of cruelty. They hadn't just forgotten. They had chosen to ghost my party, to leave me waiting in my beautifully renovated apartment with a table full of food, and to go out to dinner together, toasting their unity without me. It was a punishment for daring to have something of my own, for not conforming, for not asking for their permission or their good eye. The phone slipped from my hand and clattered onto the floor. I didn't even flinch. I just stood there, staring at the perfect, beautiful room I had created. The flowers, the food, the music. It all felt like a mockery now, a stage set for a play with no actors. The 8 years of sacrifice, the month of backbreaking labor, the hope for a second chance, all of it culminated in this. A single, brutal text message designed to tell me exactly where I stood in my own family. I was nowhere. I was nothing. The breakdown this time wasn't loud. It was a quiet, internal collapse. I walked over to the stove and turned off the oven. I blew out the candles I had lit. I walked back to the center of the room and slid down the wall until I was sitting on the floor, my arms wrapped around my knees. The city lights began to twinkle outside my window, but inside my perfect apartment, I had never felt so completely and utterly alone. The finality of it was crushing. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a verdict. And I had been found wanting, just as I was about to be completely submerged by the wave of despair. A sound cut through the silence, the buzz of the intercom. It was so unexpected, it made me jump. I considered ignoring it. It was probably just a delivery for the wrong apartment, but it buzzed again, insistent this time. I dragged myself to my feet and walked over to the panel by the door. I pressed the talk button. Hello? I said, my voice hoarse. Eliza, darling, it's me. Bez. Me and my hands are full. Grandma Eleanor, a jolt went through me. I had completely forgotten. In the drama of my family's betrayal, her promise to come had been erased from my mind. I fumbled with the door button, a fresh wave of humiliation washing over me. Now, she would see my empty party, the uneaten food, the pathetic evidence of my rejection. I opened my apartment door and waited. A moment later, I heard the creak of the elevator doors down the hall, followed by the soft click of her sensible shoes on the floor. She appeared in my doorway, a vision in a lavender wool coat, her silver hair perfectly coiffed. In one arm, she was carrying a large gift-wrapped box, and in the other, a heavy-looking leather briefcase. She stopped on the threshold, her bright blue eyes taking in the scene. She saw the beautifully set table for 5, with only one place. Disturbed, she saw the platter of untouched roast chicken. She saw the lone figure of me standing in the middle of it all, my face streaked with tears. Her smile faltered. Eliza, what on earth is wrong? Where's everyone? And it all came pouring out, the whole sordid story. The initial reveal at Sunday dinner, the mockery, Charlotte's laugh, Mark's suitable for you, my mother's criticism, and then the party, the invitations, the non-replies, the waiting, and finally, the text message. I pulled out my phone and showed her the picture, the smug faces, the cruel caption dot as she looked at the screen. I watched a remarkable transformation come over my grandmother. Her soft, kindly face hardened. Her spine, already ramrod straight, seemed to stiffen even more. A glacial fury settled in her eyes, a look I had only seen once or twice in my life, usually directed at a stockbroker who had given her bad advice or a politician she particularly despised. She handed the phone back. To me, her lips a thin, hard line. She stepped fully into the apartment, setting the gift and the briefcase down on my new coffee table. She walked slowly around the room, taking everything in. She ran a hand over the smooth, white walls. She bent down to admire the finish on the hardwood floors. She peered into the sparkling new kitchen. Finally, she turned back to me. They called this a disaster, she said, her voice dangerously quiet. This? Eliza, this is one of the most beautiful and thoughtful homes I have ever seen. You have done a magnificent job. You took a forgotten place and gave it life. You have your great-grandfather's, I in your father's hands. What a shame your father has forgotten how to use his. She walked over and took both of my hands in hers. Her skin was soft and papery, but her grip was like steel. I am sorry, my dear. I am so sorry that the people who should have been your biggest cheerleaders are small, petty, and jealous. But I want you to know something. Their opinion is worthless. It is the squeaking of mice in the face of a lion. She let go of my hands and walked over to the coffee table, picking up the leather briefcase. She placed it on the dining table and clicked open the 2 brass latches. The sound was sharp and definitive in the quiet room. I have to confess, Eliza, she said, her back to me. I had my own plans for tonight. I told your parents and Charlotte that I was coming to your party. I told them I had a very important family announcement to make and that it was imperative they all be here. She turned around. In her hand was a thick manila folder. You see, I'm 90 years old. I'm not a fool. I see how they treat you. I've seen it for years. You are the quiet, steady one, and they are the loud, grasping ones. I've been watching, waiting, and you're buying this apartment all on your own was the final test. You passed with flying colors. They, she said, her voice dripping with contempt, have failed spectacularly. She opened the folder and slid a document across the table towards me. It was thick, formal paper, covered in legal text. At the top, in bold letters, I read the words, quitclaim deed. My eyes scanned the page, my brain struggling to process. The information, I saw property descriptions. I saw notarized stamps, and then I saw the names. The grantor, Eleanor Vance. The grantee, Eliza Vance. What is this? I whispered. That, my grandmother said, her voice ringing with triumph, is the deed to my lake house. The house, the property, the dock, all of it. I had my lawyer transfer it into your name last week. It's worth about $400,000. It's yours, free and clear. I was going to announce it tonight, here, in front of them. I sank into a chair, my legs suddenly unable to support me. The lake house. The magical place of my childhood summers. It was the one piece of our family's history that felt pure and good, and it was mine. But she wasn't finished. My plan, she continued, her eyes glittering with righteous fire, was to give you the house, and then, to be fair, I was going to give Charlotte a balancing gift. A check for $250,000. She reached into the briefcase again and pulled out her checkbook. I believe in fairness, Eliza, but fairness is about more than just numbers. It's about character. It's about decency. It's about showing up. And your sister, along with your parents, has shown me tonight exactly what her character is worth. She sat down, uncapped a beautiful fountain pen, and began to write. The scratching of the nib on the paper was the only sound in the room. She wrote with a steady, determined hand. When she was finished, she tore the check from the book with a satisfying rip and slid it across the table to me. I looked down, paid the order of Eliza Vance, and in the box, the amount, $250,000. They chose a $60 steak over their own family, she said, her voice cold as ice. So be it. They can have their dinner. You get the lake house. And Charlotte's share. Tonight, Jennifer gets nothing. And if they don't learn to change their ways, I assure you, that is only the beginning. I stared at the deed and at the check, and at the face of this incredible woman who had just detonated a bomb in the middle of my life, clearing away all the rubble and leaving me standing on solid ground. And for the third time in my new home, I began to cry. But these tears were different. They were tears of shock, of gratitude, and of a profound, earth-shattering validation that went deeper than I ever thought possible. My grandmother let me cry for a moment, then she patted my hand. All right, my dear. No more tears. We have work to do. Where is your phone? I pointed dumbly to where it lay on the floor. She picked it up, unlocked it, and handed it back to me. Now, she said, a wicked glint in her eye, we are going to take a picture. You are going to hold up that deed. I am going to hold up this check. And we are both going to smile as if we have just won the lottery. Because, in a way, my dear, we have. We stood in my beautiful living room, the uneaten feast in the background. I held up the deed to the lake house, my hands still shaking slightly. Grandma Eleanor held up the check for $250,000, her expression one of pure, unadulterated satisfaction. We smiled for the camera. Post it, she commanded. Post it on every social media platform you have. And the caption should read, some housewarming gifts are better than others. So grateful to be celebrating new beginnings with my real family tonight. Thank you, Grandma Eleanor. I did as she said. My fingers flew across the screen, my heart pounding with a terrifying, exhilarating sense of rebellion. I hit post. For about 90 seconds, there was silence. Then my phone began to vibrate. It didn't stop. A cascade of notifications lit. Up the screen, texts, missed calls, voicemail alerts, Facebook Messenger pings, Instagram DMs. It was an explosion. First, a text from Charlotte, us, followed immediately by, what is that? Is that a joke? And then, call me right now. A text from my mother, Eliza, you need to call me this instant. What is the meaning of this? You are causing a scene. A missed call from my father, then another. Then a furious text, take that picture down, now. The phone didn't stop buzzing. It was a swarm of digital panic. We just sat there, my grandmother and I, watching the meltdown unfold in real time. She took a sip of the water I'd poured for her, looking utterly unconcerned. About 10 minutes later, the inevitable happened. The intercom buzzed, this time with a frantic, angry energy. I looked at my grandmother. She just gave me a serene little nod. I ignored it. Then came the banging. Loud, furious pounding on my apartment door. Eliza, open this door. Open this door right now. It was my father's voice, laced with a rage I hadn't heard in years. Eliza, what have you done? That was my mother, her voice shrill with hysteria. Through the thick wood of the door, I could hear Charlotte sobbing. The lake house. He was supposed to give me the lake house. I looked at Grandma Eleanor. Don't you dare open it, she said calmly. This is your home. You decide who gets to enter. And in that moment, I felt a shift in the tectonic plates of my own soul. All my life, I had been knocking on their door, begging for entry, for acceptance. Now they were on the outside, pounding, desperate to be let in. I had the keys. I was in control. I said nothing. We sat in silence, listening to their frantic pleading and angry accusations, until eventually they gave up and their footsteps retreated down the hall. My phone continued to buzz, a furious wounded hornet in my pocket, but I didn't look at it. The next few days were a blur of blocked numbers and deleted voicemails. The final act came a week later. Grandma Eleanor called what she termed a final family meeting at her lawyer's office. She didn't require my presence. She said it was better if I wasn't there. She recounted the entire meeting to me later that evening over the phone. She told me how my parents, Charlotte and Mark, sat across a polished mahogany table from her and her stone-faced lawyer. She calmly and methodically laid out their pattern of emotional neglect and cruelty towards me, culminating in the vicious and unforgivable stunt they pulled on the night of my party. She informed them that her decision regarding the lake house and the $250,000 was final, legal, and irrevocable. Then she delivered the coup de grace. She had her lawyer present them with a revised draft of her last will and testament, the one that now left the vast majority of her considerable estate to a variety of charities and, of course, to me. Their inheritance was reduced to a token amount, just enough to prevent them from legally contesting the will. She said they sat there, stunned in the silence, their faces pale with shock. The swagger and condescension were gone, replaced by a raw, naked terror. They had miscalculated. They had underestimated the quiet one, and they had forgotten who held the real power in the family all along. They had flown too close to the sun, and their wax wings had melted. My life now is quiet. But it's a different kind of quiet. It's not the silence of deprivation or loneliness, it's the quiet of peace. I sold my beautiful apartment at a significant profit, thanks to my renovations, and I used that money, along with my grandmother's gift, to build a small, modern cottage on a corner of the lake house property. I have blocked my parents, my sister, and my brother-in-law on every platform. I do not take their calls. I do not answer their letters. Maybe one day forgiveness will be possible, but it is not a debt I owe them. It is a gift I am not yet ready to give. My real family is smaller now, but infinitely stronger. It consists of two people, me and the fierce, brilliant 90-year-old woman who lives in the main house just a short walk away. Every Wednesday, we have dinner together. Sometimes we eat at her house, sometimes at mine. We talk about books and politics and the migrating patterns of the loons on the lake. We never talk about the rest of the family. There's no need. Sometimes when I'm sitting on my porch, watching the sunset paint the water in shades of orange and pink, I think about that first apartment. I think about the 8 years of ramen and hope. I used to think I was building a home of plaster and wood, but I was wrong. I was laying a foundation, stone by painful stone, for myself. I was building a life where my worth wasn't up for debate. A life where I was the architect, the builder, and the sole occupant. And from here, from this place of peace, I can finally see that the greatest gift I ever received wasn't a house or a check. It was the moment I realized I didn't need anyone else's approval to feel at home.